Cheryl, that looks great. This is a courtesy announcement that our meeting is now being broadcast on the web portal and YouTube. Welcome, Abe. If you'd like to check your audio. George, go ahead and check your microphone.
Test.
Very clear, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else who's just joined us, if you'd like to check your microphone and your connection, please chime in.
Good afternoon, this is Margaret.
Sounds good, Margaret, thank you.
Thank you. And I may have a presentation or somebody from our department may already signed in already as well.
Okay, if you'd like to check your screen share, now would be a good time for anyone for you.
Okay.
Do you know who's going to be sharing your presentation?
I've got Annie and Robin on the line. I hope they've already joined.
I see Annie.
Awesome. Can you see my screen?
Hello, this is Abe testing his mic.
Loud and clear, Abe, thank you.
Can you
Thank
see
you.
my screen?
Yes, Margaret, your screen looks fine.
Thank you.
If you're going to share your own screen, you want to go into full screen view.
Okay, will do.
Once you're sharing.
Okay, thanks.
Good afternoon, Rob Coelho joining.
Good afternoon, Rob. Sounds good. And welcome to those who have just joined. If you'd like to check your audio, please chime in.
This is John Gokenham.
Sorry about that. John, sounds good. Paolo,
Okay.
please go ahead.
This is Paulo Hernandez.
Sounds clear. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, this is Victor with Supervisor Chavez's office, just testing our audio.
Sounds great, Victor. Thanks.
And Supervisor Chavez will be running a few minutes late. I've communicated with Supervisor Lee's office, and they will be communicating with the supervisor.
Thanks for letting us know.
Thank you.
Hello, this is Greg Ituria.
Sounds good, Greg. Thank you. All right. If there's anyone we've missed who would like to check in with their audio connection, please go ahead and do so.
Hi, this is Sarah Henricks.
Hi, Sarah.
Thank you.
And we'll try again. Dahlia Rodriguez. Dahlia Rodriguez, I believe you're connected to a conference room. If you can hear us, please check your connection. And if there's anyone I've missed who's just joined us.
Can you hear me now? Sorry, this is Dalia Rodriguez. I'm here.
Great. Yes.
Okay.
We gotcha. Thank you. If anyone else who's just joined us would like to check their audio connection, please go ahead. This is a courtesy reminder that this meeting is currently being broadcast live on the web portal and YouTube. We will be starting a few minutes late today. And last call for anyone who's just joined us and would like to check their audio connection, please go ahead and do so.
Hi, this is Miguel with a mic check.
Sounds great, Miguel. Thank you.
Thank you.
For those who joined us recently, we will be starting a few minutes late today, and the meeting is currently broadcast live on the web portal and YouTube.
Well, good afternoon. It's about close to 2:03. I'm just going to wait maybe another minute or so. Let's see if we get Supervisor Chavez. I know she's running a couple minutes late, so when she's on board, we'll get it started. So just a quick question with the clerk. Looks like we have currently 64 participants, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Right. Okay, good. When is this going live to the public? Or already live?
We are live right now.
Okay, very good. Okay. Of course, I want to also respect everybody's time. Yeah, our meeting is scheduled now. I know Supervisor Chavez has earlier mentioned that she will be a few minutes late, so I just want to respect that as well, so that we could go ahead and get her here to be on time. And I think what we could do, guys, is maybe we could just kind of get rolling until Supervisor Chavez comes on board, and we'll take roll at that time. So first of all, good afternoon. Welcome, everybody. We'd like to go ahead and call the FGOC committee meeting to order at this time. My name is Supervisor Otto Lee, and I'm truly honored to be chairing the Finance Government Operations Committee, FGOC, along with my vice chair, which is Supervisor Cindy Chavez, who will be joining us very. Oh, here she is. Speaking of which, hi. And now go ahead and ask other members of our committee to introduce themselves, starting with our County Executive Office.
Hello, this is Greg Uturia, County Budget Director.
Good afternoon. This is Miguel Marquez. I'm the county's Chief Operating Officer.
This is Steve Mitra, Assistant County Counsel.
Okay, if those are the ones we'd like to introduce, I would just want to say that with both supervisors present today, we now have a quorum. And so will go ahead and take us to the first item of the agenda, which is public comments. The public comments is reserved for persons desiring to address the committee on any matter that's not on this agenda today. Members of the public wish to address the committee on any item not listed on agenda should request to speak at this time. Individuals will be called to speak in turn, and speakers are limited to the number of depends on the number of people on board. So clerk, how many people do we have for the speaker list at this time?
There are currently 4 requests to speak.
I see. So if it's 4 or less to speak, I believe each individual do have 3 minutes each. So let's get the timer started at 3 minutes for the speaker. Thank you.
Sure. The next speaker is caller ending in number 148. I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You'll have 3 minutes to speak, and the timer will start when you begin speaking. Caller 148, going once. I'll go back to caller 14. Oh, there you are. Go ahead.
Hi. I wasn't aware I had a number, but I guess it was me. Thank you. Good afternoon, Supervisor Lee and Supervisor Chavez. I was prepared with a 1 minute. So before I get started, I do just want to say how happy I am to see you, Supervisor Lee. It's great that you could join us and be a part of our unity in battling so many of these needed things in today's hard times. So thank you very much for being part of this. And hi, Supervisor Chavez. As always, I'm so happy to see you. My name is Elena Robles. I would first like to express how very proud I am of Santa Clara County's leadership in the pandemic battle, as well as in addressing the issues of equity and racial justice. I am speaking today as chair of El Comité Employee Coalition that represents services to our diverse Spanish-speaking community. And I say diverse because it is. We have Afro-Latinos that speak Spanish as a first language. We have Japanese, Peruvians, and other groups that are here as part of whose Spanish is their first language. It's a huge group. We are requesting that while you review the county budget for program effectiveness and efficiencies, that you consider adding another dialogue to that consideration, one that will finally address a gap that exists between policy and action. It is one that could address passive-aggressive hidden racism that all too often gets dismissed as outside the purview of our Equal Opportunity Department. This is something that the coalitions from social services, the employee coalitions, have discussed for quite a few years and find a frustration that there's a gap. There's just a gap that needs to be considered. Truly, there comes a point when a pattern of consistent, they get dismissed as anecdotes, right, of racial or ethnic smears that could become concern, and then action, but particularly seem to be on the rise and not on a decline. And at one point, when smoke becomes fire, it's too late. And so I would say that smoke is always cheaper to deal with than fire. And I hope that you might consider this and perhaps bring up a conversation with our coalition about how this is addressed, is being worked on in our own department. Thank you so much for your time, and be well.
Next caller is Scott Largent. I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Scott Largent. I'm having one of those days. Don't worry, I won't use foul language today. I do apologize for that. In Santa Clara County, when we, in a way, any agency, let's say government in general, when we make a mistake and we cause somebody harm, whether it be a vehicle towed, a wrongful arrest, a series of different things that can really level you. We don't have like a damage control system. We don't have that safety net. We don't hop in there and say, hey, we made a mistake. Let's fix it. Let's patch this person up and get them on their way. And the reason I'm saying this is I interact with hundreds of people every week now. And I really get down into the trenches and I figure out, how did this person end up living in a creek? Like, what was their story? What did they do before? What do they have? Family? Do they have children? Do they? And I'm not really like using these people as therapy, but it is helpful for me to talk to people that have had loss like this. And I want to understand it, because homelessness and the mental health issues is a very complex situation. I do understand that, but there are people that can be pulled out of this. And I don't think we really need to do that much to fix these problems. I needed my visitation orders enforced. I worked very hard to be able to see my child. Our district attorney's office did nothing for 2 years enforcing those rights. That leveled me. It caused major damage psychologically to me. Nights and nights of crying myself to sleep and panic attacks, and it's messed me up. And I continue to fight and fight and fight, and I am literally digging my own grave fighting for my child. I'm in this by myself. The public defender's office, having had a family law attorney on hand, a civil attorney, they could hop in situations like this and put a Band-Aid on something fast. I mean, I needed somebody to hold my hand in a way. I'm the product of a high-end Silicon Valley divorce. My parents basically dragged this thing out through court. It was unbelievable. Businesses, homes, the whole 9 yards. I'm traumatized in court. I clam up. I don't want to be there. It is the hardest thing in the world. I can get on in public comment and talk about damn near anything, but I go into court and it's just like I start to sweat. I start to panic. It's like, this is very difficult. So thank you.
Next speaker is caller with the number ending in 198. I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking. Caller 198, are you there? I will go back to caller 198. Oh, there you go.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Sorry. Thank you. My name is Carla Torres. I have been a county employee for going on 20 years this year, and also a member of El Comité under Social Services Employee Group, and also here today as a member of the Racial Equity Leadership Team. And so what I'd like to speak about is the work we are doing to address systemic racism, both, as a system and also in looking at internal policies. And specifically, I wanted to share that, I have witnessed with my colleagues who are people of color, and I have also experienced racial issues at the agency. And I think that if we look at the office that currently deals with those investigations, but looking at it with a systemic lens of, how can we improve, the way those investigations are handled? What are the accountability things we can do? And so one of the things that our group has been looking at, and hopefully we can get your support on, is the idea of an anti-racism oversight committee. And so we're just very fresh in the process of fleshing these ideas out, working with our partners on various levels, and just wanted to offer that as just something that's coming from, from it's a grassroots effort and involving a lot of people who are at the table with a good heart and good intention. And so I just wanted to offer that and just let you know that, yes, the way we've handled complaints in the past has not been the best, and it has led to a lot of pain and hurt, but I think we could do better. And so just thank you for the continued support.
Our next speaker is Suraj Gurma. I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, go right ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Raj Gurma. As a county employee for over 20 years, I do not have confidence in the effectiveness of the Equal Opportunity Department. The most glaring concerns in regards to microaggression and differential treatment by those who have power and privilege have gone unchecked by the EOD. I have seen how African ancestry employees have been treated and literally run out from departments and SSA with no accountability. This was especially evident in 2020 when the EOD reported their findings to the African Ancestry Committee. The perception for many employees, including myself, is that though concerns are reported, no actions will be taken by the EOD. Thus, the lack of confidence in the EOD leaves employees demoralized, powerless, and vulnerable. Thank you. I yield my time.
And that concludes our list of requests for speakers.
Thank you. So now we move to the next item on the agenda is to approve the consent calendar and to make any changes to the committee's agenda. So items being removed from the consent calendar will be considered at the end of the regular agenda for discussion. The committee may also add items of the regular agenda to the consent calendar. Notice to the public is that there is no separate discussion of consent calendar items, and the recommended actions are voted on in one motion. So if an item is approved on consent vote, the specific action recommended by staff is adopted. So members of the public who wish to address the committee on consent calendar items should comment under this item at this point, okay? And each speaker is limited to 2 minutes total. So first question, Vice Chair Chavez, do you have any changes you would like to make to the consent calendar, please?
Yes, what I would like to do is add the Fairgrounds master planning process. I want to thank the staff because it responded to all of my questions and it was very clear and straightforward. Then item 6, the internal audit fiscal year report work plan. Item 9, the fellowship program. And item 10, the ESA as extra help usage for agencies and departments. So I'd like to add 4, 6, 9, and 10.
To the consent calendar, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay. Does anybody else have any questions about that?
There is a request to speak.
Okay, great. All right. So let's open up the public hearing on it.
The next speaker is Scott Largent. I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You will have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Thank you, everyone. Scott Largent. The item I'm speaking about is the fairgrounds master plan that was put on the consent calendar. I know we don't want to do this, and I know it's kind of been a weird thing to provide, housing out there or the ability for people to park their motorhomes. I know we're kind of cleaning up the fairgrounds right now, and that's kind of been shoved off to the side. I don't think that's really going to happen. After COVID, I was hoping maybe we could look at that a second time. They have cleared out several RV parks that were there. There's really no option when you have an older motorhome. Most of the places that are local, you have to have a motorhome that's 10 years old or newer type of situation. My motorhome is a 1987 Chieftain. It's actually really cool. I have a kitchen now. I have power. I have a home, and it's really all I can do right now. I'm parked down off of Spring Street and Heading, and kind of down here in Lord of the Flies, and I've gotten people together in my little area here that are working. We all go to work every day. We watch out for each other's stuff, and I'm starting to get to know some really good people. And then, of course, on the other side are some really, really, really bad people. I would love to have a safe place to go. I would love to have a fence. I would love to be around other people that are possibly sober. I want to continue doing this, and I just don't want to be kind of like out in a field. It doesn't seem like I'm asking too much. Do we have places for people to take these motorhomes? There's a lot that have showed up out here. There's a whole group from Redwood City. They basically got swept out of Redwood City, and they made their way out here. A lot of really nice people. They work, they have kids. Seems like we could vet out those ones that would not be a problem. I'm not saying just dump everybody at the fairgrounds. So thank you.
That concludes our request to speak.
Okay, good. I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. So we now have a motion to move items 4, 6, 9, and 10 to the consent calendar. And if no objections, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion.
So moved.
I'll second it. And
Vice Chairperson Chavez.
Yes.
Chairperson Lee.
yes,
Thank you.
great. Motion passes. Okay, so in that case, our next item on the agenda is item number 5. Number 5 is a report from the County Council on the process relating to protection of county employees who file personnel-related complaints. This is a referral from December 8th Board of Supervisor meeting, right? And let's see, and to present this item, I believe, is our County Council staff. And who's speaking today on behalf of the County Council's office?
Good afternoon, Supervisors. Rob Coelho, Assistant County Counsel.
Hello, Rob. Good afternoon. Go ahead, please proceed.
I'm happy to do so. And thank you very much for the opportunity to provide this report back from administration as well as our office. I believe the clerk's office has the PowerPoint that the board requested to accompany this, and I would ask that that be put on the screen, please.
We'll put it up right now.
Thanks, Colin. Supervisors, I have what amounts to a high-level 5-minute overview and a little bit longer 10-minute overview. I'm happy to do whatever the pleasure of the board is. I'll be here the entire meeting to respond to questions, but whatever you would like in terms of the presentation.
Thank you. Supervisor Lee, this is in response to a referral I brought forward.
Right.
And given the number of items that we have on our agenda, I'd like to request the 10-minute version so that, one, I think it would be more fulsome and may help shape the conversation. And I know that Dr. Smith has also joined us to speak on this same item.
Sure, definitely. Thank you, Vice Chair Chavez. Yes, and Rob, go ahead, please proceed.
Thank you. So Colin, if you could move to slide 2. Slide 1 is just the cover slide. And this is part of an attachment to the board agenda to members of the public and those who are here. Just by way of a very quick background, the board referral included 6 specific items that there was a request for administration in our office to report back on that related to personnel complaints. And let me just lay out what those are. Specifically, the referral requested the county's current policies, procedures, and practices to investigate personnel-related complaints, as well as to communicate outcomes of those investigations and subsequent actions to a complainant, perhaps those in the same department as the complainant, the person accused, as well as the public. Also, what protections, and this is set item 2, which is laid out in the lengthy report back, the county's protections against retaliation against someone who raises a personnel complaint. And by personnel complaint, just so that you know, we tried to approach that broadly. It's a complaint about a county employee. It could be from another county employee. It could be from a subordinate. It could be from a member of the public. It could be someone that we're actually serving as a client. And we provided, I believe the total was a 31-page extensive report back addressing each of the issues requested in the referral. The third item of the referral was asking us to lay out how the county identifies and mitigates conflicts of interest relating to personnel complaints among county staff in terms of, are you having managers who are accused of wrongdoing actually investigate that wrongdoing? Or are we having somebody independent or apart from the investigation conducted? And our report back covers that issue, as well as how we try to separate the work that our office in the county does to address and investigate fairly in complaints, and then also the separate part of our office that actually defends the county if lawsuits are ultimately filed, and the report responds to that as well. The fourth item is how the county requires contractors to comply with our equal opportunity and other employment law requirements, as well as ensures that those are investigated, since those are not county staff people, these are contractors, what we do with respect to that. The fifth category that we responded to was what training is provided to county employees regarding professionalism, effective management, conducting investigation, preventing harassment and discrimination in the workplace, preventing retaliation, as well as management of employee performance and behavior. And the report back covers that extensively as well. And then finally, the request to us included what recommendations we have for periodic report back tied to the county's Equal Opportunity Department, EOD, their investigations, so that the board, or at a minimum FGOC, will have a periodic update on what types of complaints are received, how many are received, and how quickly those complaints are being processed. As this committee knows, the Harvey Rose organization is currently in the middle of a management audit tied to EOD and may come forth with its own evaluations and recommendations in addition to whatever the board or committee come up with. Our report assesses that as well. Colin, if you can go to the next slide. What I will tell the board, this committee, as well as the public, is what we learned in trying to cull together this information in response to this referral is that there is no one site within the county where someone can figure out, if I've got this type of complaint, where do I go? And so if members of the public or the committee take nothing else from this report, I would suggest that you please take a look at pages 28 through 30 of the report back, which lays out in grid form the types of complaints that can be brought, the department specifically that investigates those complaints, how to contact the department, as well as a link for email purposes or otherwise. Whether the complaint be one that the Equal Opportunity Department investigates, the whistleblower program, or any specific county departments, whether it be health and hospital services or social services, probation department, sheriff, or DA. And one of the things that I think administration and our office need to consider, and the board may want to provide direction or input on, is how best to make sure that type of information is readily accessible to the public, so that individuals who have concerns, whether they be employees or members of the public, know where to go and how to do it, instead of spinning their wheels with the concerns and feeling like they're not being effectively responded to. So the investigative processes, just for ease of the committee and the public, we do describe at great length the Equal Opportunity Department's investigative process and what it does. That's pages 3 to 7 of the report back. The whistleblower program is a separate program that the county created for reports of misuse of government resources and abuse of government processes, specifically as identified both in board policy and the statute in the county's ordinance code. Pages 7 and 9 lay out in detail what the whistleblower program is, what it investigates, and how it goes about doing that. We also, in pages 9 to 10 of the report, talk about complaints that can be made to the Employee Services Agency. These are primarily labor-related complaints where a complaint is that a union contract is not being complied with. And the report lays out specifically how those complaints can be followed up on. And then individual county departments, from pages 10 to 18 of the reports, we lay out if there's a concern that a patient has about the hospital, or that a hospital employee has about safety tied to patients. Pages 10 to 12 of our report refer to health and hospital system complaints. Pages 12 to 16, social services complaints, including those relating to DFCS, our Department of Family and Children's Services, and dependency-related cases. And then finally, we cover specific departments that have specific investigative units, the sheriff's office, the district attorney's office, and probation department that have what are called internal affairs units that are specifically charged by policy with investigating complaints about employees within that department. And that's pages 16 to 18 of the complaint. Colin, if you would please go to the next slide. By overview, the report in this slide lays out the basis for someone either raising a complaint or the county investigating those complaints. Specifically, there are board-specific policies and county policies, as well as ordinance code sections that mandate that certain investigations get done. So for example, if there's a complaint of harassment, discrimination, or retaliation based on someone being a member of a protected class, whether it be sex harassment, sex discrimination, race, disability, national origin, and other legally protected classes, the law, federal and state law, require the county to investigate. But the county independently has a policy mandating that those investigations occur. And that's specifically the board policies 3.8 and 3.9, which are equal opportunity department investigate. Policy prohibits harassment, discrimination, retaliation on the basis of identified classes, including union affiliation. And the EOD is charged with investigating those allegations. Also with investigating claims of retaliation. If someone makes a complaint, the EOD investigates those. The whistleblower program is identified specifically in the county ordinance code. It was a county construction within the last 10 years. And the whistleblower program itself has mandatory reports back to the Board of Supervisors with respect to investigations that are reported to it. One nice thing about the whistleblower program and EOD as well is if an individual goes to them and something is not within their purview, they will try to provide guidance to the individual as the right place to go. But again, as I mentioned at the outset, it's very important for folks to consider the report back to the extent that puts information all in one place, as well as the chart of places to go, so that if a member of the public or county employee has concern about another employee or how they've been treated tied to services being provided by the county, they will know exactly where to go. Labor Relations investigates labor contract and related grievances. The health and hospital system has specific policies mandating investigation of complaints with respect to employees, and those policies are identified in the report. And what we've tried to do is we try to, where there is a publicly available policy accessible from a public website, our report provides a direct link to it. So anybody can open up the report, click on the direct link, and go to the specific policy. If it's not immediately publicly accessible on a public website, for example, it's an internal policy that's not posted, we attached it to our report. So this committee and any member of the public who accesses the report would be able to see, this is the document that's being referenced, this is the investigation policy that I need to get or that I want to review to make sure that I understand who investigates, the timeline if it's laid out in the policy, as well as the process. Finally, the Social Services Agency, there are state law provisions as well as administration policies and Department of Family and Children's Services specific policies relating to investigations of personnel-related complaints. I will let the committee know, as laid out in the report, that DFCS is in the process of updating those policies so that it has the so that it can roll out in more detailed policy, providing more specifics as to how investigations will be conducted and when. One thing that this process resulted in is a confirmation that some of the policies are not as clear as they could be. And so those policies, the SSA policy by way of example, is under revision. And I believe the anticipation is that that will be completed very shortly. Certainly not, a year out, not 6 months out, but in the next few months. There will be an obligation to meet and confer with the labor organizations with respect to any policy that relates to investigations of county personnel and possible discipline. So the next slide refers to specific departments, and the report lays out, for example, the sheriff's office. If somebody has a concern about the sheriff's office, where you go to file that complaint, what the internal policy is that relates to investigation of that complaint, and how that complaint will be conducted. And the same is true of other departments. Could we go to the next slide, please? Retaliation was the second item that the referral asked us to look into. And there are, and this is again pages 18 to 21 of our report, but there are federal, state, and local laws that prohibit retaliation, county board policy with respect to harassment, discrimination, and complaints to the Equal Opportunity Department prohibit retaliation, and the EOD specifically investigates those allegations. We gave the de-identified examples of intervention by the county when reports of retaliation come to its attention on page 19 of the report. And for the benefit of the committee as well as the public, I'll just give a couple of examples because this is an issue that sometimes arises. I've raised a complaint, but I don't want to be treated badly just because I've raised this complaint. What will management do to make sure that there is no retaliation? And just by way of a couple of examples, in one instance, the Equal Opportunity Department determined that a supervisor had given a complainant, someone who complained to them, a hard time for submitting a complaint to the EOD. That appeared to have a chilling effect on that employee. EOD contact communicated directly to the department, and that resulted in immediate follow-up with the employee on counseling. And in some instances where retaliation has been investigated, and specifically where it's been found, disciplinary action has occurred against the county employees up to terminating their employment for retaliation. Other instances in terms of what the county does if it determines that retaliation has occurred includes separating the retaliator, but not punishing the person who's complained. So what that may mean is the person who's engaged in the retaliatory conduct, if they retain their employment, is moved to a different department or different assignment, has supervisory responsibilities removed so that they're not in a position to be able to impact scheduling or other things relating to the employee. Other examples are given in the report, and I'm happy to respond to specific questions from the committee as it relates to those specific examples or any other examples. With respect to conflicts of interest, and this is the next slide, case-by-case assessment is done to determine who should investigate complaints. So for example, let's use the Equal Opportunity Department. If a complainant says, I feel like someone in EOD is treating me badly, then that gets vetted up through county administration in our office, and we would retain an outside investigator to investigate it. We're not going to have EOD investigating itself. Similarly, if there's a complaint involving a supervisor within a department, Labor Relations works with that department on the investigation of that complaint as it relates to personnel matters and consults with our office as well as the department as to who the appropriate investigator is. While that is the preferred practice, there are some things that happen at a low level at a department level that aren't vetted to our office and are not vetted to Labor Relations. So to the extent these things do come to Labor Relations, our office attention, we are trying to ensure that the person who's accused of the misconduct is not involved in the investigation other than as a witness who responds to questions from someone else who's higher up in the department or from a completely different department. The same is true within the whistleblower program. We have independently county hired investigators who look into whistleblower claims. If someone claims that there's been a misuse of county resources or county funds that triggers a whistleblower investigation, the whistleblower investigators conduct the investigation, not the department. The only exception to that is if there's a complaint about the office of the county council, for example, that gets referred not to our office to investigate, but to the county executive's office or to specifically the Harvey Rose organization. So that again, our office would not be investigating itself. There would be another entity that would be taking a look at that investigation. And the whistleblower program statute lays out that. With respect to separating investigations of wrongdoing from litigation defense, our office includes attorneys who defend the county when lawsuits are filed. They're not the ones who are advising departments as it relates to the conduct of investigations. So for example, we have a labor team within our office that I oversee. That labor team provides day-to-day advice to county departments on personnel issues and the labor relations department on complying with labor contracts and labor negotiation and related issues. If there's an individual issue where an investigation needs to be done and our office is consulted, we don't turn it over to our litigation team. Our labor team tries to advise so a personnel investigation can be done appropriately. And if a lawsuit is ultimately filed, then it gets turned over to our litigation team to defend the actual filed lawsuit. There are occasions when our litigators are alerted to claims, for example, a government claim being filed or a Department of Fair Employment and Housing or EEOC administrative complaint getting filed, but that's a filing with an administrative agency, and then they would become involved because the county is already on notice of a specific complaint that's been filed against it. And in that case, there might be a parallel county council investigation for defense purposes, but a departmental investigation for the personnel related matter. But those would happen on separate tracks. We wouldn't have the person defending litigation be the one overseeing the investigation of that specific matter. Next slide, please. We're down to our last two slides. In terms of contractor compliance, the county's standard service agreement has requirements that contractors are required to comply with labor and employment laws and other related laws, including non-discrimination laws, as well as county non-discrimination policies. If anyone has a belief that a contractor is violating those, so if we learn from an employee that a contractor is mistreating its employees, those complaints may be referred to the EOD, which will assess whether or not it has the ability to investigate. And certainly the first stop, if anyone has a complaint, can be to the county whistleblower program. The county whistleblower program will determine whether or not it's within its purview, but will definitely get that complaint in the right spot. So the county administration will be aware of it and will be able to take appropriate action on the contract. And our contract provision, standard contract language includes the ability to terminate contracts if contractors violate the provisions, including non-discrimination, non-retaliation provisions of the contract. With respect to the final slide, it's training. How do people know what these rules are? How do they know that they're required to comply? We have mandatory training for all employees on sexual harassment prevention, as well as anti-bullying. The law in the state of California, it's in the government code, it's section 12950.1, has long required supervisors within employing agencies, so the county's an employer, has long required managers and supervisors to receive sexual harassment prevention training, a 2-hour training every 2 years. In response to a referral from Supervisors Cortese and Wasserman, our board mandated that every employee in the county receive sexual harassment prevention, anti-retaliation, and anti-bullying training back in 2015, I believe. A couple of years later, the California legislature, perhaps having seen our county do it, or perhaps because of other input, has now mandated that all employers within the state at a certain number threshold provide that same training to all employees, not just managers, not just supervisors, but every single employee. So our county has actually been ahead of other jurisdictions and the state in terms of mandating that employees be told, here's what the rules are, here's what can be done and can't be done, and here's where to go if you have a complaint. The county also offers through our office, labor relations, EOD, and our learning and employee development department specific training for supervisors as it relates to effective communication, managing conflict in the workplace, progressive discipline, complying with race and gender and other discrimination laws and reasonable accommodation. There are times when those trainings are mandated. For example, a reasonable accommodation training and an anti-retaliation training for supervisors was something that was mandated by the county executive's office several years ago and was provided to managers and supervisors throughout the county. Others are voluntary and encouraged and urged through county administration and the Learning and Employee Development Department. That's my overview. I know the report is lengthy. It's 31 pages. We've got many exhibits, but I'm happy to try to respond to any specific questions the supervisors have.
Okay, thank you, Robert. That was a long 10 minutes. Supervisor Chavez, do you have any questions on the item?
I think Dr. Smith wanted to weigh in, and then I think it would be good to hear from the public, and then I'd like to ask questions.
Okay, we'll do.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Dr. Smith?
Thank you, supervisors. Clearly, County Council has given a very thorough report about our investigation processes. I wanted to offer a slightly larger perspective. You notice that Rob, in his discussion, pointed out that these investigation processes are focused on violations of laws, policies, procedures that have been adopted by various legislative bodies. And typically their complaints are focused on the actions of an individual, either an employee or a contractor. I think it's often true, and the board, I think, agrees that there's more to the issue of racial equity and bias than just obeying the law. And I think oftentimes individuals who complain through the EOD process or one of these other processes about behavior that's happening in their workplace are extremely frustrated when it comes back after the investigation that violation is not sustained. Because to sustain a complaint against an individual requires proof that they violated a law. And that's different than culture, much different than culture. Because the board understands this truth, and because we are a part of society in the United States, we have built into our organization, just like the rest of our local society, some implicit bias. And if anybody doubts that, the last 4 years of racial animus is proof that we have implicit bias in our society that's built up over many years. And because we are an organization made up of people and processes, by definition, we have that also. So I've found that employees and others who complain about bias will at times be very frustrated because they can see the inherent implicit bias in the culture of the part of the organization, and they're complaining about that, but the individual that they're complaining about hasn't specifically violated a law. So because of that, the board and I have separated out from the organizational investigation process a new office of racial equity, which we've placed under the supervision of our new deputy county executive at the highest levels of the organization. And that intention is to have that group develop a cross-county awareness, training, teaching, involvement in dealing with implicit bias and all of the violations that aren't violations of laws, policies, and procedures, but are violations of the culture in the organization, and so that we can separate the two. EOD is tasked by law with investigating specific violations by individuals of specific policies, procedures, and laws. And that's just not enough of a investigation. The investigation really is investigating our culture, coming up with ways to change our culture, having constant vigilance about it. We've had an informal group of employees working with the GARE program, the Government Alliance for Racial Equity, and we're going to expand that. And I heard one of the public commenters talk about a suggestion for a departmental community or departmental employee group to deal with cultural issues. We want to coordinate all of those efforts, make sure that everybody's aware of problems with inequitable, implicit bias in the culture, and that we can address it more effectively rather than trying to address it on a one-by-one basis with EOD complaints or whistleblower complaints, which is not to say that these complaint programs are not critically important. They are, but they really focus on a much more narrow interpretation of violations of process, procedure, and culture. We want to have a bigger, more expansive view. And I know the board is aware of this, but I just felt I needed to say that for the public.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Smith. I'll go ahead and open up the public for comments.
The next speaker is Linda Hyole. I am unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You will have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking. Hi, Linda, go right ahead.
Hi, my name is Linda Hyole. I'm a former DFCS employee. Anybody in this county who knows me can tell you about my character, my work ethic, and the quality of my work as a county employee. But I had to leave DFCS due to ongoing racism and discrimination perpetrated by my manager. This same manager is the reason many Black employees have left DFCS. Many employees like myself went through the chain of command at DFCS and SSA, but nobody protected us. We ended up at EOD, but I regretted ever going to EOD because the process just made my traumas worse. I went through hours of interviews. I didn't hear from EOD for almost a year. When they got back to me, they said my concerns were very bad, but didn't rise to the level of racial discrimination. I gave them more information. They said they'll get back to me, but they never got back to me. Then I was told that I could appeal to the EOD director, and I said, that's not going to happen. I said, I have no faith in her because she's running an agency that protects managers who perpetrate discrimination and racism against employees. I also raised the issue that the EOD director went to law school with the manager I filed a complaint against. So how can she supervise a fair investigation? I said she should have recused herself from this investigation. Other employees also have an issue with this relationship. Then later on, the director met with the African American Employee Committee. And instead of addressing this issue substantially, she was questioning the AAEC about the petition about this manager on the SEIU website. Not long after, one of the stewards, this manager filed a complaint against one of these stewards.
Our next speaker is Melissa Willette. I am unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You will have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Hi, Melissa Willett, Vice President of SEIU Local 521. I'm glad this item is being brought to light. I first want to say that Mr. Coelho stated, of course, meet and confer obligations are going to be met, but I do feel like that is the bare minimum. So the labor unions and the workers that work for the county should be already formally participating in this process for their insight, for the qualitative data that they can provide, their experiences, and to ensure the racial equity lens as well as the gender equity lens is used throughout the entire process. Next, Mr. Coelho reported on the anti-bullying training. And I do want to remind the board that as far as I know, there's no anti-bullying policy or mechanism for enforcement of anti-bullying in the county. So the training is great, but it doesn't do much. Next, I want to say regarding the contractors and their issues with employment and complaints. So I'd feel more comfortable that we were handling those complaints if we had hired permanent staff for the Office of Labor Standards Enforcement. Currently, as far as I know, at the end of the month or within 2 months, there won't be an OLSE investigator working for the county, which is a problem. We got to get that posted and hired for. Number 5, regarding the witch hunts. The internal administrative personnel investigations. So those are no information whatsoever given to the workers. I can speak from experience multiple times over. You get invited to a meeting, you don't know why. Months later, may be invited, may not, no idea. And finally, my experience has been that our workers aren't maybe as sophisticated or formally educated and won't know the language to use. So their complaint, if it's supposed to be treated by one or the other department, is treated like a hot potato. It's passed from EOD to whistleblower to labor relations to EOD to the department, definitely the unions in there the whole time. And as a coworker or representative, I've had to coach workers to say, don't use the discrimination word. Don't say the word union because you're going to get passed up if you use the wrong word or the wrong language. It looks like these departments are trying to not have these complaints be in their purview. And so the workers get passed around. Thank you.
The next speaker is Andrea Reese. I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You will have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking. Andrea, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. My name is Andrea Reese, and I've worked for the county for over 21 years. I'm here to share my frustration of how ineffective the EOD office has been for African ancestry employees with respect to complaints. I am speaking for myself and others who continue to work at the department and those who have left. Employees build the courage to speak out and seek help and support when they feel that they have been discriminated against or they're a victim of racism or bullying, only to be ultimately told by EOD it does not meet the criteria. So either you are left to live with it or ultimately you leave. We have lost so many workers, seasoned workers that have dedicated their life to the work and helping the community in which we serve because they feel frustrated, they feel victims, they feel helpless. And our department, the African ancestry employees have diminished, the number of employees have diminished, so which impacts the community. This has occurred on numerous occasions, and we are now left with no trust or faith in the EOD office. Thank you. One other comment. As an African-American employee, I feel very threatened by the name whistleblower and would hesitate to really make a report to that office. Thank you.
Our next speaker is King Maxey. I am unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You will have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Maxine King, and I am a resilient Black African-American female. I have been with Department of Family and Children's Services for over 20 years. I was told to go and get my master's degree and I could be promoted. I was told that my MQs did not match the qualifications on my application when I did apply for positions. I was told I did not have enough walk hours in order to be a supervisor, to be on the transfer list. I interviewed 3 times for a supervisor's position. 3 months later, I was told that I did not qualify to be on the transfer list. I was told by an HR analyst that if it was left up to them, I would have never qualified to be on the transfer list. I filed a complaint with EOD office. They sent me a response in 2021 that it was not sustained. I feel somewhat to the point to where I'm almost like tired of fighting. I'm tired of trying to apply for positions knowing that they're not going to see my qualifications, knowing that I qualify for these jobs. So it really hurts to the point to where it's like you just continue to stay in a position, and the only time that you're needed is when they need resources from your African-American community, and then they want you to be on a committee or be on a board so they can get resources from the community. And I just think that is so unfair. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Lourdes Gomez. I am unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You will have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Hi, my name is Lourdes Gomez. I'm an emergency response social worker at DFCS. I've been with the department 31 years. And I too feel frustrated with the EOD. I filed a complaint against the manager that Linda Hill spoke about. And after the investigation was concluded, a month later, the manager turned around and filed a complaint against me with the EOD, which I find that a form of retaliation. And it just appears that, EOD tends to leak out information to managers about, investigations that have been, complaints that have been filed, which then managers turn around and tell workers, well, EOD didn't make any findings, or EOD, doesn't think that, this happened, which demoralizes the worker from even trying to correct the situation or from filing a complaint. So we need a process that is more worker friendly, where workers can feel safe to file and not fear retaliation. Thank you.
And that concludes our request to speak.
Thank you. Vice Chair Chavez, do you have any questions and comments?
Yeah, so first of all, Rob, I just want to thank you very much for the body of work. I see that a lot of work went into this report, and it's there. Anyway, thank you. I wanted to start with some broad questions, and Rob, I wanted to get your kind of feedback on it, and Dr. Smith, if you're available, your feedback as well. One of them has to do with just kind of broadly the way where we place these different offices. And my first concern or sort of question is how does the placement of these offices, how is it structured in a way that ultimately meets your needs? And so there are two parts to the question. One is placement relative to how best the offices can be placed so they can get the job done. And then second, Rob, in particular with your office, how do you manage the potential conflicts of interest that I think are really inherent in having the legal department is really designed to protect the county's interests, and yet we could have legal issues that are really bubbling up from the different types of investigation.
I think I'll defer to Dr. Smith on the structural question, because I think that's an operational one. I'm happy to respond to the second question.
I think you hit on a great point, Supervisor. This problem has been one that's bothered me for quite some time, and I think you will see, well, I know you will see a recommendation in the budget this year to change the reporting structures. As I pointed out, specifically with regard to EOD, the investigation process is really to find out if there's evidence of non-compliance with the law or with policies and procedures. We're really more of a legal issue rather than a cultural issue, which is the frustration that I hear from the employees. it's not good enough to just say you didn't break the law. There's other things involved. So currently EOD reports to the county executive. I will be proposing that it report to county council so that it has a very clear delineation of what their role is. And the reason I feel like that is appropriate is because we're separating out at the county executive level the culture complaints, the issues of racial equity, the issues of implicit bias, and they will report directly to the deputy county executive. And as that matures, we will involve a complaint process that has a bigger picture look at the organization rather than just whether or not a law or policy has been violated. As was mentioned, it's very frustrating to make a complaint about a behavior that is very offensive and very troublesome for you and have a report back that the complaint is not sustained, which might well be a valid report that, confirms that a law was not broken, but it's not good enough. So the other agencies or programs report in different structures. Whistleblower reports to county council also, but reports there more for confidentiality, so that a complainant can be confident that their complaint is confidential. The investigation processes with regard to the sheriff's department and hospital and SSA are department-specific complaints, so they reside in the departments. So what I want to do is raise to the highest level the fact that we acknowledge as a county that we're affected by implicit bias and that it's a cultural problem that's built into our culture that we need to address constantly.
So just on that topic, and then Rob will come back to conflicts. And first of all, I think that's really a very good direction. And one recommendation I would make is that I think there would be value in having conversations with folks who've gone through our processes, because I think the point you raised, Dr. Smith, that's so powerful is that I think whatever structures get put in place have to be meaningful for the participants, both those who are making the complaints and also those who are being complained about. Because I think that whether, and this actually goes to kind of irrespective of whether or not we're talking about culture or we're talking about more serious, well, I guess they're all serious, but more defined legal action, and that is that having an internal mechanism for corrective behavior, correction, because and something that's very consistent from a coaching perspective or an action plan. Because I think one thing that at least my observation has been, of the cases that have come to my office that have involved the most people or the highest level of complaint, in both instances of issues around bullying and retaliation, and this may be more bullying and retaliation. I need to go back and think a little bit more about this, but it appears that we have either promoted the person or continued to allow the person to manage others without a clear, at least not an externally clear plan or enough change in behavior that it would be obvious that some action had been taken. And I guess I say this because I think, Dr. Smith, your point about culture really at its core, if we're really looking at cultural change, we're accepting that people will make mistakes and that there will be a way to remedy the mistake, both for the complainant but also for the person who who learns, because we presume with implicit bias that once there's training or some sort of corrective action, that it gives the person who's making the who's maybe the offender the opportunity to improve.
Right. If exactly true. If we identify a culture problem, there's a way to deal with it. If we identify violation of a law or a policy or a procedure, it's a personnel matter, which can be very frustrating to the complainant because personnel matters and discipline and, you know, advice or reprimands or those kinds of things aren't public. But if their behavior is part of a culture of implicit bias, we can address that specifically and try to improve that behavior and be aware of it as a open and public issue rather than as a personnel issue.
So if what we're looking at then is overall, you know, change really rooted in the philosophies around just culture, and I want to come back to what can be public or not, because I'm wondering if that's as bright a line as we've taken with it, but I don't know the answer to that. But just to kind of go back to this, to the issue that you raised, Dr. Smith, is that the type, and I think this is why it would be good to have conversations with our employees. I think the types of remedies for, you know, addressing cultural change would be interesting to understand as it relates to how you improve employee performance. And, you know, and I think there's a fine line sometimes between what raises to the level of discipline versus what raises to the level of education. And I think that would need to be something that we have some shared, that we have a shared benchmark around. I know that it's more ambiguous than we're talking about it in a really abstract way right now, but there does seem to be that there should be some determination that of what makes, you know, what are the differences, the more significant differences. And we're kind of, interestingly, we're dealing with this at the Hate Crimes Task Force now too, because we're having conversations about what the law determines as a hate crime or hate incident versus, you know, something extremely offensive that should be addressed, and how both are addressed. So I don't mean to say that this is a problem that we're just wrestling with internally.
Yeah, that's a very good analogy, perfect analogy, exactly true. To be convicted of a hate crime or charged with hate crime, there are a lot of criteria that, and if you have a very offensive behavior that doesn't meet the criteria, you won't get charged. In the same way that this works with EOD, perfect example. And that's why we really need to address that line that you're talking about between personnel action and culture change. Because it, like you say, it's not a bright line. There's lots of gray in there, but we need to address it. We can't just be satisfied with gray.
Rob, do you want to talk a little? Thank you, Dr. Smith. Do you want to talk a little bit about the conflicts?
Yeah, Supervisor, thank you for the opportunity. We don't view it as a conflict, and I'll let you know why. The Board of Supervisors is our client. As part of that, we end up representing the county when it's sued, including county employees who are sued. But the direction that we've received from the Board of Supervisors includes, if the county does something wrong, to help the county find the best way to remedy that wrong. And so the way it manifests itself is if we get a finding of an EOD violation where there is a policy violation, our obligation is not to defend the manager who's been found to have violated it. It's to make sure that we're acting in the county's best interest. And the county's best interest in that circumstance means we're advising labor relations and the department appropriately with respect to the level of discipline, the process for discipline, and the process to ensure that the worker who complained, number one, is not retaliated against, but number two, has a fair opportunity and a reasonable likelihood of raising future concerns and complaints and doesn't feel like this is being brushed under the rug. To the extent that we've identified claims where the county inadvertently or otherwise, where we've had employees do wrong, we've made recommendations to the Board of Supervisors. We've made recommendations to the county executive based on delegations from the board to resolve those claims at a monetary level or other level to make sure that the person who was subjected to the wrongdoing gets an opportunity to settle their claims. We don't approach things saying, well, somebody in the county's been accused of wrong, so we're going to protect them all the way through trial. There are instances where cases go all the way to trial, but more often than not, we're helping county administration to fulfill the direction we've received from the board, which is to try to resolve complaints where the county has done wrong and to try to advise on how to fix it going forward. And that includes recommendations on training and types of training. It includes recommendations on remedies to the person who's the victim, if there's a sustained finding, as well as how to communicate effectively with the person who's committed the violation if they're going to be an ongoing county employee. Sometimes it results in termination. If there's a sustained finding, we certainly have had cases that become public where the person's appealing to the personnel board or don't become public because county administration recommends that the person be fired. We work with them in that process and the person resigns in lieu of, or in fact is fired with no appeal. I don't know whether that answers your question or not, but the fact that we defend the county in litigation doesn't mean we don't on a day-to-day basis act to try to resolve complaints favorably for employees who assert claims that are viable and where there's sustained findings. Or even if it's not a sustained finding, if we see, that policy doesn't seem right, or it looks like you're applying this inconsistency, whether it's a policy violation or not, we recommend you confer with labor relations about making sure that this is rolled out to the unions in terms of revising or updating your policy, because it's unclear. And that's the whole reason we appear to have gotten where we got.
I think, I think that, just an overall comment about the report. I think the report did a very good job of explaining what we should be doing. I think the challenge for us really is what we are doing. And I'll give you two examples of what I mean by this. Like my observation is that when we have legal counsel that is assigned to a department, that legal counsel that's assigned to that department starts to, and I think this is very natural, work to protect the integrity of the activities of that department. And I think where that puts counsel is in the position of, protecting the institution. And again, I don't even know if I'm not saying something that it's just been my observation. It appears to me that the balance between protecting the interests of the county writ large, and I don't necessarily, and I've always been a little ambiguous about the role of county council relative to protecting the board, or working for the board and protecting the institution. And again, I think these are all gray areas. I don't think it's as black and white, because I think it depends on the situation. But one of the concerns that I want to raise, because I just think it needs to be addressed, not because period, is that I think that it's very critical that the policies and procedures that are internal to the organization create an option where there may be a real and meaningful conflict between what is doing right for the county and doing right for the complainant. Because I think there are times when that is very much on the bubble. And I think it's worth thinking about some of the past cases that we've had to determine whether or not my concern is real or just an observation of behavior. Because I think that what I appreciate about putting this body of work within the framework of county council is there's a way of training that lawyers get, and a significant ethical training that lawyers get around how to comport themselves. So but I think that the reality is that we still have to press and ask the questions as to the motivation and how we disaggregate that. And I've been on, in public, in enough closed sessions through my public career to know that that's a real tension. And it's not I don't think it's a fault thing. It's just something I'm curious about as it relates to the opportunity perhaps to move more of these activities under council, whether or not that limits our ability to more openly solve problems, because frankly, putting more lawyers in on these, I don't know if that starts to really help us resolve problems always. My experience with county council has been very positive. So this isn't me saying that you've done something wrong. It really is a very genuine question about how that internal pressure that you may feel and that different people who work for the organization may feel gets addressed in these kinds of processes.
I'll respond with only one comment that may help provide some framework to the public as well as to you, Supervisor. One thing that James Williams, the county council, made clear when he became county council after being appointed by the board is he doesn't want to hear departments say, well, my county council says this and my county council says that. James's approach to the office is there is one county council. It is me. We will speak with one voice. If we have a difference of opinion internally, we will resolve it and we will handle it as one voice. And I think the benefit that you have, Supervisor, is you do have the opportunity for regular meetings with James Williams as well as with Dr. Smith, but with James to ensure that the guidance that the board wants or the direction that the board wants to provide can be manifested in the work that that our office does for the board and for the county. And I at times have heard people say my county council, and as an assistant county council who supervises a number of attorneys, I immediately, and James has been a fuel for this as well, rein that in by saying, wait a second, we can't have department heads saying that. We can't have employees saying that. We need to make sure that we are on the same page. We all know the same facts or allegations or concerns, all the same issues. We don't want people forum shopping because if I tell you this, then I'll get this answer. We want to make sure everybody's hearing the same things so we can try to do the county's business as best as possible. I think that's the best information I can give you, Supervisor.
Yeah, and that's really helpful, Rob. I think that the thing that I would just want a little more reflection on, and I want to think about it a little bit more too, is again, from a training perspective, is that something as we start to change the way we're addressing these challenges within the organization, is that training that we also need to think about even for council, even though you have all this ethical training? Because I do think that I think that it is, to me, it is very natural for people to get to build relationships and trust, and the way that gets expressed is different. And I mean, it could be different depending on the person, irrespective of even having strong ethics in terms of how you approach a problem. But I hear what you're saying, and actually, I had heard that before. I haven't heard it recently. So I just want to say to you and James, I think you've made your point. To Supervisor Lee, this is a document that in a body of work that from me and from my office has been underway for quite a while. And so I realize that we have other issues on the agenda. And if council and Dr. Smith are comfortable with it, what I'd like to do is continue the item to the next board meeting, just because I know we have 3 more items that I want to make sure you can get to. But the report is so big and chunky, and it was good to hear both from Dr. Smith and I almost said Dr. Coelho, from Mr. Coelho, that I would like the opportunity to dig into it a little more, reflect on what I've heard, because I think it will impact some of the recommendations that I'd like to make.
Supervisor, did you mean bring it back to committee or bring it directly to the full
Oh, no,
board?
I just meant back to committee. Thank you for clarifying.
Okay. And by the way, he is a doctor.
Oh, that's right. If you're a lawyer, you're a doctorate of law, right?
Well,
yes,
we have within the county a Dr. Coelho as well in South County. So I'm fine. Rob is fine with me. Thank you.
That's right. So we don't mess you up. Yeah, I was gonna say you've been moonlighting, getting another, well, because Dr. Smith, you're a doctor. Got it. All right. Oh no, now Otto's gonna want me to be Dr. Lee. I got another doctor to deal with.
Oh, no. Oh, we don't go there.
But if you're comfortable with that, I'm happy to just continue the item and finish at our next meeting.
Yeah, and that's fine with me. So no further comments. I'll just go and ask for your motion. So you have a motion to continue this report to be come back to the FGOC meeting in the next meeting, correct, Cindy?
Yes, that would be my motion.
So now I'll go and second it.
Vice Chairperson Chavez
Yes,
and Chairperson Lee.
Yes.
Thank you.
and thank you for the report. It was, and for both of you, your comments, they were very helpful.
Great. So now we move to item number 7, which is a report from the Finance Agency relating to annual fixed assets inventory items that were not located. And I believe, is that Margaret? No, staff was that Margaret Alaya?
Yes, it's Margaret.
Yes, thank you. Hello. We could barely hear you. Yeah, I'm not hearing it. I think there's some issue with the audio.
You might be on mute, Margaret.
Margaret, it looks like you were muted and now you are unmuted. Can you go ahead and try to speak? Her audio worked when she checked into the meeting.
Gremlins.
Hate it when that happens.
Margaret, I watched you mute and unmute yourself.
She may just be having technical problems. Do you want to maybe go to another item and then?
Yes, why don't we do that? We guys come back to item number 7. Let's go to item number 8 for that matter. So item number 8 is receive report from the Office of Sustainability relating to county sustainability achievements and progress on the Sustainability Master Plan goals. And here to present this item would be Jasneet Sharma, the Director of Office of Sustainability. Jasneet, are you here?
I am here, Supervisor Lee. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Please go ahead.
Absolutely. I'm going to give me a second to quickly share my screen. And if you could confirm when you can see the screen as well, please.
Yes.
Yep, we can see it. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just waiting for it to go into slideshow mode. Is that looking okay at your end?
Looking great. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. Again, good afternoon, Supervisor Lee and Supervisor Chavez. I'm Jasneet Sharma. I'm the Director for the Office of Sustainability. I also have Tanya Veach with me, one of our senior sustainability analysts, and together we are very pleased to share some of the highlights from the attached 2020 annual sustainability report. And more so, we actually want to unveil the publicly accessible Sustainability Master Plan website and data dashboard for you as well. So just a reminder, the board adopted the Sustainability Master Plan just in January of this year. And really the SMP seeks to present both a vision and a roadmap to integrate sustainability as a core function within our operations, coordinate and support cross-departmental sustainability efforts, but really more so empower collective action and transformation to build a livable, equitable, and resilient county. This vision is achieved through promoting solutions across 4 priority areas that you see on the slide here, and combined they include 8 goals, 30 strategies, and 90 targets. So the annual sustainability report actually uses this new structure from the Sustainability Master Plan to report out on and highlight our annual achievements. Moving forward, that's what we'll be doing. The climate protection and defense priority that you see here, really its goal is to help the county meet its commitment to be carbon neutral by 2045 and also become resilient in the face of future hazards and climate threats. So despite an increase in the county's real estate portfolio since the last greenhouse gas inventory was done, sourcing 100% of our power from renewable sources, energy efficient lighting retrofits across our county facilities, this has led to a 52% reduction from 2015 in greenhouse gas emissions from building and facilities, and an overall reduction in emissions by 20% from 2015. Additionally, we're seeing significant progress in installing EV charging stations and a significant increase in employee telecommuting to 33% since the shelter-in-place orders were issued. All this is helping us further reduce our emissions in the coming years. This year saw the continuation and expansion of county's efforts to reduce the cumulative impacts of environmental hazards through numerous efforts. Some that I just want to highlight is applying pesticide-free practices to continue to manage our county parks, reducing water use by now connecting a total of 7 county facilities to recycled water for irrigation, and then increasing awareness of the importance of protecting our riparian areas by expanding watershed education curriculum and pollution prevention to our school-aged population, and also establishing a new volunteer group to improve riparian habitat. And then our city forest, the nonprofit that we have a contract with, is continuing to lead planting efforts in the county. And this year, they were successful in planting about 400 trees as part of the tree planting and stewardship program that we launched in June of last year. Despite the pandemic, the county continued to work towards a healthy community by ensuring that residents have access to healthcare through telehealth visits and social safety net through the provision of housing, meals, and financial assistance. Over 500 county residents completed energy efficiency upgrade, and that helps them create a more comfortable, healthy, and safe home as well. And after the shelter-in-place orders were issued, the county library district made access to learning a priority by allowing residents to open new online accounts. I know that because I was one of them who went ahead and did that for myself and my kids as well, which really resulted in an increase in 80% of e-materials being downloaded and nearly 180% increase in portal visits to the county site as well. And then we've continued to support efforts for our local businesses during the pandemic and also enhance collective action. The Green Business Certification Program pivoted to support local businesses, not just with implementing environmental measures to reduce kind of their cost, to have more cost savings, but also helping them build resilience to future impacts. And then the BayREN program, the Bay Area Regional Energy Network, it provided online trainings and education for local contractors on commercial and residential electrification projects. Dr. Smith just mentioned the Government Alliance for Race and Equity program that the county has continued to participate in, and then the Internal Race, Equity, and Leadership Academy that a number of departments have taken part in as part of the pilot to apply a racial equity lens in policy and practice. And then recent grant funding is going to help us further move forward on collaboration and collective action through developing a resiliency strategy to flooding and sea level rise, and then launching a county collaborative as well. I'm going to hand off to Tanya Veach. We made a collective decision not to take you to the website live because you never know how internet is going to treat you in the moment. So we actually wanted to just kind of walk you through some of the screenshots, and I'll hand it off to Tanya now.
Thank you, Jasneet. Good afternoon. My name is Tanya Veach, Senior Management Analyst for the Office of Sustainability. I have the privilege of unveiling the Sustainability Master Plan website and data dashboard, which is officially live and publicly accessible. Although I will not be doing that live demo today, I do encourage everyone to explore the website and dashboards at www.scc.gov.org/sustainability plan. I will quickly showcase the website through screenshots and explain the structure as well as features of the website. Next slide. Providing a user-friendly experience was the driving force behind this development of the website. The website is designed to be both desktop and mobile friendly for all users. The homepage summarizes the Sustainability Master Plan and provides opportunities for users to easily visit various pages on the navigation bar. I realize it may be hard to see, but the navigation bar clearly describes where a user can find the vision of the Sustainability Master Plan, priority areas, the data dashboard, and resources. Next slide. The priority areas landing page gives users a sneak peek of the 4 priority areas and along with their associated goals. To learn more, a user can click on a priority area icon or goal. The text will expand and turn yellow to indicate that the text is clickable. The feature is utilized throughout the entire website. Next, we will explore the climate protection and defense priority area in detail. Next slide. When a user lands on the climate protection and defense page or any of the priority area pages, they will see that there are many options to explore. We selected an accordion style format to convey a wealth of information without overwhelming the user. As the user navigates the website, they can explore the issue, our approach to the issue, current efforts to mitigate the issue, as well as the 2 goals within the priority area by simply clicking the icon on itself or the read more button. A preview of one of our dashboards for this priority area is also included and hopefully piques the interest of the user to explore other dashboards within the goal. Let's take a closer look at goal number 1, carbon neutrality. And this is the section on your right-hand side. This page provides an overview of the goal, the current strategies, and available data. By clicking more details on the strategy, one can view the associated targets and their dashboards, as well as the existing programs, policies, and activities. I'm going to give you a little glimpse into the data dashboard page. Next slide. As Jasneet mentioned earlier, the data dashboard will allow the community and county leaders to easily view and track our sustainability progress annually. The data dashboard integrates the 4 priority area dashboards, which includes interactive, easy to understand visuals of baseline and progress data for targets identified in the Sustainability Master Plan using Power BI. For example, here's the county operations greenhouse gas emissions dashboard, which lists the Sustainability Master Plan target, the scale, and available data. As you can see, the county was successful in reducing its emissions from the 2005 baseline, and which Jasneet mentioned earlier, and 61% of our emissions come right now from employee commutes. The SMP has 90 targets with the intent of having a dashboard for each. To date, 30 dashboards are available. Throughout 2021, we will continue to work with the departments to identify the key performance indicators for the remaining targets. I hope this is a quick overview, provided a brief understanding of how to navigate the Sustainability Master Plan website and the data dashboard. I encourage you to explore the website further, and we welcome any feedback you may have to enhance the accessibility of the website. We look forward to connecting with you to continue to advance sustainability across the county of Santa Clara. And I am now going to hand it back over to Jasneet to highlight the upcoming activities.
Thank you, Tanya. So just in closing, I think we've mentioned a number of the efforts that are already underway when we came and presented to you in January, updating the county's green building policy for electrification and resiliency standards, adopting electrification reach codes for our private development in unincorporated areas, and also a sustainable purchasing policy. We're also hoping to bring back to the board recommendations to meet the Bay Area Air Quality Management District Cut the Commute pledge goals that the board adopted in September, which seeks to maintain telecommuting by at least 25% of county employees post COVID-19. In addition, in-depth assessments of critical county facilities for resiliency and microgrid options will be initiated, and county facilities will be evaluated to develop an electrification plan as well. Last year, we experienced unprecedented environmental, health, and social challenges from extreme heat, wildfires, and smoke, over and above the ongoing pandemic as well. As we update the climate hazard and risk map for the counties through Silicon Valley 2.0, I wanted to close out by giving you a sneak preview of the type of analysis that's underway and what some of the early modeling is showing as well. So the map you're seeing on this slide, it shows the projected number of days with maximum temperatures over 100 degrees for the next decade in Santa Clara County. You can see that it ranges anywhere from about 20 number of heat days in the north part of the county to about 60 to 80 days in San Jose and close to 100 days in the south part of the county. It's troubling. I know when I looked at this map the first time, I had a visceral reaction as well. So what this really, I think, is the important thing I want to point out is the impacts from changing climate. It's no longer an issue in the future. And it's all the more critical for us to take some of the lessons that we learned from COVID response and also integrate it into climate resiliency to increase our preparedness and resilience to protect our people, our habitat, and countywide assets as well. And again, thank you for your time and attention today, and I'm happy to respond to any questions.
Thank you, Jasneet and Tanya. Supervisor Chavez, do you have any questions on this item?
Just a couple. First of all, I wanted to say this is really exciting work, and I'm looking forward to spending some time getting to know the website a little bit more and really, really appreciate the dashboards. Like, I think the whole county needs to go there, so really appreciate you leading the way. One question that I wanted to ask, first question really is, you know, I am concerned that even during this really challenging time, the number of people who've signed up or haven't for SEC Alert. And I think, and I don't think I don't know if Dr. Smith is with us anymore, but I think one action that we need to take right away is integrating SEC alerts into all of our communication as we move through the pandemic. And I know we did a little bit of that. Oh, there you are, Dr. Smith. I know we did a little bit of that earlier in the pandemic, just as a way to sort of engage people. But I think we should be thinking about that both as it relates to COVID-19, but also as it relates to just getting prepared for the fall fire season, honestly. And so, Dr. Smith, what I was just going to recommend is that as we're doing this significant last push with the investment of approximately $1 million in our communication relative to COVID-19, whether or not we could also employ into that, you know, the campaign around getting people to sign up for SEC alerts in preparation for kind of, frankly, our next emergency, and knitting that together a little more closely. And then, you know, so I don't know, Dr. Smith, if you have any thoughts on that.
Yes, we certainly can. And I'm very encouraged by the Federal Rescue Act, which will mean direct resources to counties and cities that will help us expand our emergency infrastructure and promote a more prepared future. So I agree with you. As we're pushing on COVID and still worried about COVID, it's an opportunity for us to coordinate with SEC Alert and other notice systems.
Yeah, and one thing, again, that perhaps I'll just raise that I'm going to be really interested in seeing as we get into the budget cycle is what we can do also relative to wildfire and the PSP shutoffs, because I'm nervous again that we're going to just finish vaccinating people and start dealing with fires. So anyway, I'll just sunshine that for you, Dr. Smith, now.
Yeah, if we could take over PG&E, I'd be happy to.
Jiminy Christmas,
because
right?
they can't seem to do anything right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really nervous about it. I just think about what we went through this last year, and And I think just looking at the heat map, I don't know if you saw it, Dr. Smith, but it's the last page of this item, this packet, just looking at how many hot days we're gonna have and really make, and it's also gonna be our most susceptible to wildfire, that one part of the hillside, so.
Yes, and I don't know if the public's looked at the Environmental Protection Agency's projections for water level in the future, but 2050, you know, Jasneet knows all of this. We have a very bad projection in the Bay Area. You know, if we don't stop global warming, Milpitas will be underwater.
Wow. Yeah, well, thank you on that happy note. I know I don't go to Dr. Smith for happy news.
Sorry.
No, but I appreciate it. And I do think, you know, and the other thing I would just say, Jasneet, I think this is a great way to engage all the board offices to get folks to sign up. And we are still managing the countywide newsletter. And so we'll be happy to remind people, you know, maybe even thinking about a mini campaign for, you know, 2 weeks so that we just get a lot of focus on that.
Yeah.
Thank
and
you.
Supervisor Chavez, if I might add to that, I think there are a lot of lessons learned on even just how people sign up for Alert SCC. And I think Dr. Smith knows this the best from COVID. Like we're having to use tailored message for every population group and how they all interface with their equipment and technology. So, but there are some counties that have done some great pilots, and I think we can learn from there. But I feel like we already have great soldiers, kind of foot soldiers on the ground through COVID. And it's just a matter of kind of aligning all these different efforts to have like the biggest return.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Supervisor Lee.
No, thank you. Yes, thanks for a great report, Jasneet and Tanya and your team for putting all this together. I know this is a lot of work, and the news is good, but certainly is not ever good enough given how much work is really working ahead. So for example, in terms of a county, I mean, the fact that we are going to be able to reduce our energy use by half, that's great. You know, making sure that our light fixtures are 100%, you know, efficient, highest energy efficiency standard. That's a lot of light bulbs when we have a county of 22,000 plus employees, right? So that certainly is really exciting. And you know, other ideas that we might come up with, I was just taking the elevator down, looking at our rooftop. It's like, how come those are not solar panels on there, right? I mean, so there's so many things that we can still do within our own self, or more solar panels on top of our parking structure and whatnot. So many of these ideas, as I look forward to coming up with ideas to getting ourselves more, not just LEED certified, but probably meeting other LEED standards to improve our efficiency in so many ways. So I look forward to those exciting projects that's coming through in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Absolutely.
All right. Do we have any public would like to speak?
There are no requests to speak.
Okay, good. If that's the case, do I have a motion? Vice Chair Chavez?
Move to receive the report with direction to incorporate SEC alerts into the communication work being done for COVID-19.
Right, so only second that.
Vice Chairperson Chavez.
Yes.
And Chairperson Lee.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great. Now, are we ready? Going back to item number 7?
I'm in contact with Margaret Alea. I'm not sure if we've resolved the issue or not. Margaret, are you able to unmute yourself? She's tried logging in with her phone instead of the laptop.
Right. Yeah, I see her.
Can you show me in as Anytime, please?
Yes, I can see Anytime, correct.
Okay, good. Thank you. So I'm going to use Annie's screen, unfortunately. So I do apologize. Good afternoon.
Yes, welcome, Margaret, and welcome, Annie. Go ahead.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. So the item you have before you is our annual review of our inventory for the county. And our intent, what we do annually is to go through with the county departments and work with them on the assets they have and are able to locate in their departments. This is a 3 to 4 month effort that they do, and they all report back and provide us with follow-up information. Subsequent to that, we go through a review process and we work with the Office of the County Exec to get approval to review those items. And for the items we cannot locate, we ask to take those items off our financial books. So what you will see is a total of 92 assets that we have been unable to locate. We have 26 in addition that we would like to do further review on with the Valley Medical Center because we couldn't access the location where those assets are. In terms of the total information and assets, we have them listed there. And I also have this afternoon representatives from the 3 departments, Valley Medical Center, Technology Services and Solutions, and Office of the Sheriff to provide additional information if you have them. And that's the end of my report.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, Vice Chair Chavez, you have any questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to, yeah, kind of a basic one, and maybe you touched on it, and that is, do you think that we have more equipment missing because we're better at looking for it now, or do you think there's something else impacting the trend?
It's a combination. We've been doing this for several years now, so departments are getting better, and we're insisting more that they look at different locations. And we also have the process of tagging all the assets for the county. Some of them, we use barcodes, so we're able to, which codes in the information and the location. So that allows us to be able to go to the location and validate them as well. So we have great people within the departments who have been doing this on an annual basis, a 3 to 4 month project, and they and very, very, very tenacious about finding those assets as well.
One other thing that I want to ask is that for all of these departments, you know, they tend to be the larger departments with more staff and more moving parts to them. But I'm wondering how we manage the, you know, initially when I remember when this report very first started coming to us, or maybe it's the first time I really remembered it, but I remember there were really significant discussions with the leadership of the organization, like department heads, about taking this very seriously. And I'm just wondering if that is something that needs to be reinforced with through Dr. Smith and the leadership of the organization, you know, in terms of the implications of misplacing so many assets or not being able to locate them.
Yeah, Supervisor, we try to emphasize that on a consistent and constant basis. And we're not ever satisfied that we're doing a good enough job. Although the numbers right now are considerably better than they have been, they could certainly be a lot better. And you point out the problems that occur is that a lot of these assets are assets that are relatively small, that are handled by a lot of people, and therefore really difficult to keep track of. So we're pushing the issue and we'll continue to push it.
Thank you. That was helpful. Those are all my questions. And thanks for the report.
Thank you. And I do apologize once again for the audio
Oh my
problem.
God, don't worry. Like, if that hasn't happened to it's happened to all of us. So don't worry about it. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Vice Chair Chavez. So looking at some of the pieces that's missing, I think we saw quite a bit of it. Like was this stethoscope? That's of course I guess is relatively small and easily misplaced, or let's say they walk out the door. And is there any way we could really do something about like using technology to track these items a little bit better in the future?
We have been using technology with radio recognized, right, RFIDs,
Text,
but not for all the small equipment. That's mostly only possible for large equipment. But we are trying to figure out, always more ways to use technology to keep track of assets.
Right. I mean, obviously, you talk about dialysis machine or ultrasound system, those things, or X-ray system, those are not small, right? Those are certainly relatively large. So,
well, another thing you bring up, I'll tell you, is a little bit of levity. About 10 years ago, an asset showed up on the asset list, which was a CT scanner, which was not not able to be located. Well, of course, we didn't lose a CT scanner. Nobody walked out the door with a CT scanner. What the problem was is that when it got replaced and by a new one, the database was not appropriately changed to show the transition. So it looked on the database like the original CAT scanner was still here when it wasn't. So we also have those problems too, where databases aren't kept up to snuff.
great, thank you. And that's all the questions I have for now. Is there any public would like to make a comment today?
There are no requests to speak.
Okay, Vice Chair Chavez, do I have a motion?
Thank you. I have a motion to receive the report.
And now second?
Vice Chairperson Chavez
Yes.
and Chairperson Lee.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so now, so we have moved 9 and 10 both to the consent calendar. Right, so I think we have now moved to the end of the agenda. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yes, okay, great. Well, if there's no more comments, I would just go ahead and adjourn the meeting until the next meeting, which is actually, I should know the date. Staff, would you help me on this one? What date are we meeting again for the next meeting?
Thursday, April 15th, 2021 at 2:00 p.m.
Tax day, April 15th. Okay, very good. Well, so move to April. So I'll go ahead and move to adjourn our meeting to April 15th at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Otto.
Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.